What's up, guys? This is Justin with IGN. I'm here with Sean Faust with Quark Games, and we are taking a look at Champs Battleground. Sean, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Justin. Thanks for having us in.
So, we took a look at this game before we started recording, and, my first sort of gut reaction was that this is, pretty similar to Hero Academy, pretty similar to some other games we've seen, but there's sort of one big twist that separates this game from some of those other ones.
Yeah. The real big twist, as you can see right now, is that the game is fully real-time. So that means that you can move anytime you have the energy to move. If you're taking a look at the little blue bars underneath the units, you'll see that the energy is consistently regenerating throughout the course of the battle. And so how I use that energy and where I move my guys is going to make a huge difference to whether or not I'm successful.
And so everything you're doing is sort of spending energy points, and then, so that's recharging in real time. And you need to recharge to a certain point, like each character's sort of ultimate ability is then, when you're able to wait for a fully recharged bar.
That's right.
Got it.
So right now I'm really trying to think about, like, all right, well, what points of the map do I really care about? Where do I want to be spending my energy? So, like, if you look over here, I'm trying to concentrate on this little mechanic guy who's throwing down mines, because if he gets to blow up that mine, I'm going to have a big problem.
So you're trying to burn down that sort of specific engineer.
That's exactly right.
And so you could also, if you saw that someone was getting close to their ultimate, that might be a good reason to sort of focus on them and burn them down.
It's a great reason to try to take them out. Anytime where you can take 5 ticks of energy from the enemy, you're always coming out ahead in that sort of exchange. So it makes a big, big difference.
So, again, we are playing on a grid right now, which is different than, other real-time strategy games like a StarCraft or something like that. It's obviously reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics. I mean, do things like elevation matter, or what sort of role do sort of some of the tiles that you're on play?
Sure. So if you look at the center of the screen, you'll see a lot of, like, for example, my knight I'm attacking with right there. You'll see the little swirls. Mm-hmm. Those are energy tiles. Those increase the amount of energy regeneration by 100%. They really kind of drive tension inside of the battle.
So you definitely want to try to hold down those squares if you can.
That's exactly right. And then you also have the elevation tiles, and elevation works pretty simply. Higher elevations mean you can attack further with ranged units. Lower elevations mean that you can't attack as far.
So it's not actually a damage modifier, it's really sort of helping ranged units?
It's purely helping ranged units. And the real reason why we built the maps these ways is to drive kind of competitiveness. Like, if we made a perfectly flat map with no elevation and no energy tiles, then since it costs energy to move, no one's going to move towards the enemy to attack. They just sit in their base and do nothing.
Got it.
Which isn't a particularly compelling game.
And so what's the, you're not actually, this isn't territory control or anything like that. Like, what's the victory condition here?
So we use a deathmatch system. If you look at the top of the screen, you'll see that I'm currently losing to one of the other game designers, Calvin, 2-4. And the reason why we did that was early on we had an elimination system. Start out with 6 units, and as they die, you lose those units. The real issue is if you fell behind a couple of kills, you really felt like there's really no chance you had it coming back.
There would be no comeback.
That's right. And so we really wanted to make it so people felt they were engaged the entire way, so they could come back, felt like the battles really kind of, had an ebb and flow to them.
Sure, so like, it's first with a certain number of kills.
Right now we're fighting towards 10 kills.
Got it. And so, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later when this battle's over, but, you sort of have your army composition, and each one has different skills. You have a healer, you have a ranged unit, a melee unit.
That's right. Each individual unit has its own unique composition.
Right. And so they can all move, and that takes up 2 units of energy. But then past that movement, then it's, each ability is unique to each unit.
That's right. So, like, for example, right now, if you'll see, I've got this knight right here, and he's got 3 energy. I'm waiting for that to get up to 5 so I can knock that other knight into the mine. And I'm sure Calvin will oblige me because he's a great guy.
He will not move. He will not attack while you're waiting.
But that's a lot of the strategy sometimes, is trying to figure out, like, for example, I could block him in, so he has nowhere else to move.
Got it.
And then I can use my knockback into the mine to do a lot of damage.
Nice. This seems like kind of a smart, obviously it all makes sense for touchscreens, right? It's sort of simple. You've built in a lot of sort of strategic depth, but it's still sort of basic one-touch controls.
That's right.
So all of that makes sense. It's a combination of unit positioning, it's not even really cooldown management. It's sort of in the same school as cooldown management, but I guess it's energy management.
So I think the way I would put it is we wanted to create a system with really interesting choices, right? Like the choice between moving, the choice between sticking around. Like we wanted people to always feel like it was meaningful, whatever they were doing. I think the way to look at the kind of design goal here is like we wanted to treat our players like they were smart and that they were capable of making smart decisions.
Sure.
We didn't want them to feel like they were kind of on the little treadmill, dribble treadmill, going around for a little pellet every so often. We wanted them to believe that if they played this game more and were more thoughtful about how they played it, they would get better, that their skill made a difference in the outcome of the battle. And so the energy system is kind of the core piece of that, because how I use that energy is absolutely going to impact whether or not I'm successful in the battle.
So right, so it's obviously a lot of thoughtful strategy, a lot of positioning and unit composition, the management of your energy, but there also is
this guy, man, just crushed me.
He did
pretty
crush
emotional right now.
10-6. But there's also an element of actual skill in terms of how fast you can move your units and what your reaction time is like. The guy that can move his units around the field faster, just through pure faster clicking is going to have a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, for us, people that have like a really high APM, like generally we wanted them to have maybe some slight advantage, but to be honest with you, like the energy regenerates slower than you can input. So two skilled players, it's really going to be based off of how well they use all of their energy, as opposed to like, hey, I've got a really easy time of moving through and clicking everything really fast, right? Like there's no huge advantage over that. Early on, if someone's like really fast at clicking through before you're familiar with everything, then there may be some incremental advantage, but between two very sophisticated players, it's really about choices around energy as opposed to how quickly you're inputting into
Got
the
it.
device.
And so we're on the Army management screen now, and this is going to be a freemium download, but you emphasized before we started recording that this isn't really pay to win. Why don't you walk through sort of what sort of things players will be paying for,
Sure.
How the game's going to make its money, and how sort of these army compositions come together.
So the big piece of the puzzle is that every individual unit is unique, and you can earn or pay in order to get access to that unit. We really believe in kind of what I would consider sort of a fair wage for playing our game. So that means that we're pricing the units at a level where people can actually kind of actively acquire these things on a relatively frequent.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt and say that this is sort of placeholder right now. You're getting close to launch, but some of this stuff is subject to change.
It's pretty emotional, because when you look at our real store, it's actually quite pretty.
Got it.
Our UI UX designer is probably going to be upset when he sees our placeholder store in here.
You are going into, I think you said you're about a month away. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But
so for us, though, like we want every person to feel like, hey, like I'm getting some value for playing every single day. Like I'm getting units at a relatively good rate, and more importantly, I'm getting the things that I want to get. And the way that we're really going to try to monetize is by creating so much content that you feel like you're always having to make choices.
Sure.
And if you don't want to have to make the choice, maybe you can pay and keep the game running.
So if someone has been playing long enough, they've earned some currency, they'll be able to upgrade their Vagabond, which is a ranged unit.
That's right.
Or if they want to sort of skip some of that, they can pay. But it's not like paying players are going to be they're just going to be able to crush the players playing
That's
for
right.
free.
So,
it's a little bit more like the League of Legends model, I guess.
I mean, we're all big league players inside the office. We love the game. We are really happy that they kind of provided evidence that you could move away from a pure pay-to-win system and still have a excited, enthusiastic community.
Right. So if you want to have all these heroes right at once, spend a little bit of dough, support the developer, or if you're really patient and are willing to sort of unlock them through normal play, you'll be able to do that as well.
That's right.
So what are some differences between, you sort of had this team as what you started with. Who could you have swapped in instead?
So for example, let's take these two right here. We have the Vagabond and we have the upgrade of the Archer. One thing to point out in terms of upgrading is generally you're upgrading not into power but into specialization. So like let's take a basic unit like the Squire. The Squire, pretty good at tanking, pretty good at doing basic melee damage. But if you upgrade him, you have the choice between a Knight who's a pure tank, does a great job of pushing units around, or the Axeman who does huge DPS, right? So the choice to upgrade and how you want to upgrade is really about specializing around your play preference.
Got it.
In addition to the kind of specialization, like you have to think about how all the units are going to work together. So you saw that part where I was pushing back someone into a mine.
Yeah,
right?
You made a little ad hoc combo there.
So if you see, I just put a Tinker into my army. The Tinker, with his mine ability, the makeshift mine, like works really great with the knight with
Who
his
can knock
pushback.
people around, yeah.
And that synergy exists in all sorts of different places throughout the game. And so when you're choosing which unit you want to acquire, you shouldn't be choosing based off of what looks coolest, though there's a reason why we put the Wilder in there. We should instead be choosing off of like, how do I think my army is going to be effective? A great example is like deck building for Magic the Gathering, or in Final Fantasy Tactics, like the meta game on top of that. Which classes do I want which characters to have?
So your 6-person team, you talked about, sort of the ghouls get stronger as they build up kills. The Wilder, the little, the rabbit looking, the Chibbits, I think you were called.
That's right.
And they sort of have synergies with each other. And so people, as the game evolves, they'll sort of figure out good 6-person team combinations that work out well.
That's right.
So the game does have, you're mainly focused on PvP. You're also going to have a single-player campaign. You'll also have sort of bot practice matches if people just want to test out a new team composition. And that single-player will have some replayability as people try to get 3 stars. But you're mainly focused on the PvP experience, or that's where you think people are going to spend their time?
I mean, if you want a game to last multiple years, I think you have to make it competitive. Otherwise, it's just about content consumption, and eventually people, will play through the content enough that they've had enough fun. In our case, we really view the campaign as a great training opportunity for people that want to go in and actually play, into the actual PvP battles, right? So for us, do you want to hit the find match? For us, a big piece of this is like after I've played through the single player enough times, then you should be ready for the show. Like, not everyone is I think like me, which is I like just getting thrashed for 30 games in a row while I'm trying to learn what's going on.
Sure.
You can ask my friends about my first month of League of Legends, and it was a bloody train wreck. So.
Yeah, well, everyone's is. That's awesome. So, Champs Battleground, we're taking a look at a little bit early build right now. When are people going to be able to get their hands on this?
So we're looking to have this available late July, early August. I think we're really targeting an August 1st deadline. We are working day and night through every holiday until we get it out there.
Freemium release, we're playing on an iPad right now. Is it iPad only, universal?
So we are, it should be iPad, it should be iOS, later model devices because of the requirements on the kind of graphics side.
Sure.
Also Android.
Got it. You're gonna be on Android as well.
And so for us, like the Android side, it's just making sure the quality is there because we need to cut every single asset to make sure it looks pretty.
Sure.
So we're working on that right now, actually.
Awesome. Sean, thank you for showing us sort of an early look at Champs Battleground. Everybody at home, thank you for tuning in. Remember, we're always kind of trying to spotlight the newest, most interesting things happening in the world of mobile games on IGN. So make sure you're keeping it locked to IGN.com/wireless.